Yo, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Chris, how's it going, man?
Adam, good morning.
Oh, bro, you're on. You've got your other account on, bro. You're on your. Are you on your phone right now, man? You got it. Oh, there we go. Well, you join. Oh, little hiccup, guys. Yeah, dude. Did you join the spaces on your computer, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you do, man? What we done, guys? Jake's on vacation, or not? Well, Jake's in Asia, kind of on a business vacation trip, and so we're trying a new setup here. Chris and I are. Chris has come on screen, rocking the on screen. Chris, maybe just join through the actual thing, because yeah, you've joined the spaces in the spaces, bro. You're doing the double sound, bro.
No, we should be good now. So that should help. How are we doing?
Yeah, right, man. Cool. Welcome, brother. You're here, bro.
Let's go.
On stage, man.
Let's go. Good to be here, man. This is an exciting one. So, yeah, some minor technical difficulties, but pretty excited for this show.
Yeah, and welcome on stage, Paul. Paul, great to have you, man. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And really excited to dive into Drivechains. You're like the father of Drivechains, so love to just jump right in. And kind of, can you give us
let's do it.
The quick recap of how Drivechains like came into your mind and how you've become this the kind of Drivechain advocate? Like give us the TLDR on the history of them.
Well, okay, it's gonna be a really L. So if it gets too L, then let me know.
Oh, come on, you can wrap this up.
But I'll do a short. Right? I can do a short. I was interested in a specific type of smart contract, which is the prediction market.
Yeah.
Originally, and Blockstream coined this term in 2014 for a different blockchain that you can do whatever you want over there. You send Bitcoin over there, you do whatever you want, and then people can send it back. So basically, it's like an altcoin, but there's no coin. There's only Bitcoin. All the advantages of having a completely different. So this is around the time when people were trying new things. Ethereum had been proposed. What would become BitShares, stuff like that had been proposed. NXT. These are like old, but I think anyone around at the time kind of remembers them. Of course, many of them went negative 99%, but Ethereum went on to become like number 2. So that was like the kind of thing people were experimenting with this and that. The sidechain was a way of doing that all on Bitcoin, built on top of Bitcoin. And then I got more interested during the scaling war because it was my belief. I disagreed with Blockstream. Blockstream thought sidechains wouldn't help with scaling at all, but I completely disagreed. I was working on the code myself. And I thought, actually, this is the only thing that will fix scaling because it lets the large blockers and small blockers both get exactly what they want. And so it's actually the only thing that will be permanent solution to the block size dispute. And in fact, it's the only thing that will be a permanent solution to really the idea of governance, or really any dispute where you have different people want to use the blockchain for different things. We live in a world where there's so many altcoins. This, is sort of intimidating and frustrating to new people. They think, which coins are good. Then people develop philosophies like Bitcoin maximalism that say like only one of them is legit, and et cetera, et cetera. But this sidechain just cuts through all of this by saying you can swap the software whenever you want. 21 million coins, infinite blockchains, just traveling among the chains. So that's the short arc of the story and how I first got into it. Blockstream coined this term, and then I was working on the actual code. They never shipped their site. They shipped this thing Liquid, which is just like sort of like a multi-sig thing that doesn't have any. There's no actual technology on L1. It's just a multi-sig output on L1. They never actually shipped their skip list idea, but I was working on the code, and then the scaling war. I thought this is going to be really big. The objections to it were all really terrible, so I just wasn't really persuaded by those. I thought this idea will be big, and then now with the failure of Lightning, mostly, is finally that's kind of entering the Overton window. So people are looking for something else, and they have rediscovered this.
Well, it's interesting,
which they should, because it works. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so much to kind of dive into. I mean, we could get into kind of what you think of Blockstream and the way they've done it, what you think of like Rootstock. What do you think of those kind of early efforts to do something? I guess.
Well,
go ahead.
It's very complicated, and I'd hate for anything to be like, whatever, quoted out of context or something like that. But basically, I do think that everyone really meant very well. Blockstream, I think they meant when they were raising money and when they were talking to Reid Hoffman, had this famous post, "Why I invested in Blockstream." If you read that, it all sounds great. And I think that they wanted to work on this idea. I think that the psychology of the Blockstream, of the block size war, I think it really messed up both the Roger Ver and the Blockstream. The large blockers and the small blockers got a little polarized, and it became
maybe a little more
Fox News. Yeah, became like a Fox News versus MSNBC like thing, where the quality of the dialogue and the quality of the thoughts, I think, actually really plummeted. So I think they were hung up on this idea that the large blockers can't get what they want, and so the sidechain can never even contain a block size increase, even as an optional L2. To this day, I don't know why some of them had that view in the first place, let alone kept it for so long. Although now I think people have abandoned it. Although it would be very interesting to get some of these people back, people who have just sort of vanished into the mists, Greg Maxwell, et cetera, and see if they still weirdly think that. So that's. But then the thing to say about Blockstream that would be critical would be that they raised an enormous amount of money. I mean, $210 million a few years ago, $55 million a year before that. Long ago, they raised $21 million, which was the biggest raise I think anyone had done in the Bitcoin industry. This was like 2014 or something. I don't know exactly what the state of Coinbase was, or these companies that have become super valuable later. But they raised all this money and kept a lot of it in Bitcoin. And so this would be like whatever, we're talking like $10 billion and they had like these superstar founders, Greg Maxwell had him back, the inventor of SSL. They had like all these people. They had 40 engineers at one point. You can still go on the archive, the Wayback Machine, and look at the team page and count up all the technical people. 40 engineers, a huge amount of money. And the weird thing is that they have sucked all the air out of the room on this sidechain idea. They have named Liquid a sidechain when it clearly is not. Liquid is the kind of thing that Bitcoiners would make fun of, fake like Ethereum L2s that are like multi-sig. But that's what that's the only product.
You're not a huge fan of federated sidechains or whatever they call it?
I am not. Since I'm the champion of this, basically the exact opposite. Although I don't think like it's like the end of the world, but I find it annoying that they use all the same terminology. Under the hood, it is just multi-sig, so you are giving a group of people your money. If you just swap the federation for one person, you see how bad that would be. Sure. You know what I mean? So it's just like I give all my Bitcoin to some guy, and I hope that he gives it back.
Right.
Well, like that is purely custodial. That is totally the whole point of Bitcoin is to get away from needing a trusted third party as an intermediary. So then what they say is, well, instead of giving it to one guy, you're giving it to a bunch of keys, like more than one person. But it's really like, that's not the same thing as trusting a decentralized process that has the miners can enter and exit at any time. They're in a scheme that incentivizes them to be honest. They're only paid in Bitcoin themselves, and those Bitcoin are locked for 100 blocks, so they can't be like completely screwing over the chain. They need the chain to make it another 100 blocks before they even get paid anything. So that's a very, very different thing than just give the money to someone else. And then, of course, in the case of Liquid, they say that they will refuse to explain who has the 15 keys or how the key ceremony was done. And they say this is like for security reasons or something. But basically, you have no idea. You have no way of knowing.
That's what we call trust me, bro, in the crypto industry. It's a trust me, bro scenario. Yeah.
It's kind of saying like, how do you know it's not just all one guy who made 15 keys? And they say we don't. They say we refuse to answer that question. They'll say at first, like it rests on the reputation of the 15 people, but then they won't even say who those people are. So that was one of the biggest like kind of eye openers for me, where I was like, okay, I don't know if even talking about this is a good use of time because this is so out to lunch. They opened by saying like, oh, we have 15 people. They're geographically distributed. They're reputable people. And you say, who are they? Where, what countries are they in? They say they don't want to, because, they say they don't want people to like,
sure,
hunt these people down and whatever. But that's just part of why the federated model and the multi-sig model is a bad model, because it has that issue. So I think the Blockstream, it's just there's a tremendous amount of disappointment, low productivity, you could say, like, because nothing has been produced. These superstar inputs went in, all the money, time, whatever that you could possibly want. Huge amount of money, 40 engineers for many, many years. They've been operating for 10 years now. And what has come out of it, basically?
Literally nobody uses it.
So you have Liquid is very little used. I don't know, like Green Wallet was something they acquired. The Blockstream satellite is they rent someone else's satellite TV channel, and on one of the unused channels they broadcast the blockchain, which is a cool idea, but it is not. Like it is not. They didn't like actually really. They didn't really create anything. They're renting a satellite channel.
Yeah,
but it's a cool idea. But it's a great idea. But it's not like these are. They did not they did not produce what they said they would produce. The sidechain, which is very important. Sidechain being a solution to the problem of the altcoin. Says over here we have Zcash, and it has Z addresses, and it hides the sender, the receiver, and the amount. Okay, could we have that on Bitcoin? Like that's the problem of the sidechain. But they just kind of keep saying that it's all about Liquid, it's all about Blockstream, elements or whatever, these things. So that's my Blockstream story. The RSK guys is a similar story where I think the RSK people, they've always been very friendly to me and super. Sergio is like the first person.
Rootstock, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yep.
The Rootstock people, they have always been great, and I think I always love talking to them. And I think but they also raised a lot of money, like back in like 2015, and they were going to be like the answer to Ethereum. They were like, we are going to put everything Ethereum can do on BTC. But that was back in 2015. And I don't know what they've been doing the whole time, but just like for fun, like after we came out with the Drivechain like prototype, like a few years ago, we created this thing, ETH side, that you can download today if you want. We had to create like a front end for it because Ethereum doesn't have a front end. So we made all this, which is just a clone of the latest version of an Ethereum node, just as a Bitcoin L2 using Drivechain. So like I did that again. Like I kind of feel like that was what Rootstock was supposed to do, and that's only one small tiny part of what we do at the Layer 2 Labs. Like that, I put like one guy on that for like 2 weeks to do that, and then we made the front end, and then we put some other things on it. And it's certainly not. It's just like that's all it is just a version of the latest Ethereum full node as a Bitcoin L2 on our test network, which is like Bitcoin Core. But so I'm kind of just thinking, like, I don't know, like what are they doing down there at Rootstock? What are they doing over there at Blockstream? I don't know. Maybe they're doing something.
We had actually had the Rootstock guys, one of the co-founders and a couple of team members, community members on a few weeks ago, just to dive in, kind of like what we're doing with you. And nice guys, just as you were just saying, seem completely legit to try and move stuff forward. But when I kind of like pressed about like, hey, but what's kind of a killer app on Rootstock, and basically they were like, well, we have a really good stable coin, and I mean stable coins have value, but not really if people aren't using it, right? If people aren't using the stable coin, what's the point of the stable coin? Was kind of where we landed on that. And yeah, I think
it's a perfectly fair question. And I think, like, you know, many people, they have done the USDT, has been done on many networks. So it's not like that. It's not like that has to be invented. You know what I mean? Like the ordinals and all the stuff. If you want to issue an asset counterparty or whatever. I'm not saying that it's not a good thing, but it's not a lot of novelty, I guess, maybe I might say.
So I guess one question here is, you know, both these two of these teams raise significant funds to try and bring their vision to light, right? They actually have brought their vision to light. It's just not a very bright vision, right? It's just kind of, both of them are almost dead in the water, right? So looking back, would you have done something differently, or would you have tried to raise funds back then to actually try to bring yours to light?
I absolutely would have done a lot of things differently, but you know, this is the folly of regret. That's a phrase, right, that people have. And I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm not a huge Star Trek guy at all, but I have seen only 3 episodes, and one of them is called Tapestry, and he goes back in time. It's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life or whatever. He goes back in time and he regrets a decision. He goes back and changes it, and then he finds that he goes back to the future, and the future is even worse. Way worse. So I do think, you know, you got to do whatever you don't know, like what would have happened if, and you don't know, like but that's to just go with the spirit of the question. I would say that there was a moment in 2016 when the block size war was very, very heated, and actually, so I don't want to like dox too many people, but let's just say extremely, extremely high status small blocker people actually emailed extremely high status large blocker people. It was like 15 people CC'd, and including me, and they said, instead of doing the stuff that you're doing, like extension block or Segwit2x, you should instead do Paul's Drivechain idea. That will get you what you want. And yeah, I was kind of just like, oh, they will figure this out, that this is a good idea. But if I could go back in time, I would have like seized on this a little bit more and been like making PowerPoint slides and trying to like make some kind of like proposal, and like been right on top of it with like to just kind of like aggressively shill the idea. But I just kind of thought, I don't know, I didn't really realize like what was about to happen, like that the communities would like split forever, and that they would like never reunite, and that the small block BTC world would become extremely complacent and say, we don't want any new technology on BTC. This is an attitude that persists to today, where people say we don't need Bitcoin to be used as money. It doesn't matter what mining transaction fees are. You know, it doesn't matter that they're low from lack of usage. It doesn't matter that you know, these other chains, Ethereum, Solana, are going to push the boundary on what levels of centralization are acceptable. So that was certainly like a more of a critical time where I was like kind of just a little bit more passive and was like, oh yeah, I have this blog post. But although that may not have helped, because, you know, blog post is a blog post, and then you got to write code, and then who knows if it. But I do definitely believe if people had agreed, that both sides were unbelievably overconfident at that time. They both, the large block people thought absolutely, they thought Segwit2x was guaranteed to win. We signed all these companies to sign, we got 83% of the hash rate to sign. And so I tried to convince them. I spent a little bit more, it's funny, I spent more time after Segwit2x came out, I did call a few people, and I was like, this is a terrible idea, you shouldn't do this, you're not going to win. And they were like, 83% of the miners are already running the Segwit2x software. And I was like, that doesn't make any difference. We have no way of knowing that. It's completely the same software until the date, the split date in November. And so I don't know, like, and then when they split off, they just thought BCH would win. They were absolutely, so both sides were, so yeah, I guess that's one thing would be to, I think in retrospect, I kind of think maybe the whole thing was inevitable though, because of just how strong everyone's feelings were.
Yeah.
That there was no need to compromise.
It's really interesting, the idea of I mean, it's come up this past week because, Cardano, we might laugh at it and stuff. But they got their governance kind of, I guess, protocol pass or whatever. And Bitcoin's been like this, Bitcoin's been the lead in like, how do you govern this thing? Right. With distinctly warring factions. And, I guess the kind of method has been to fork and to have these really, really vicious tribes, which, I mean, I guess in the reality, the small blockers won if the goal was number go up. That's the kind of the way I currently look at it is number go up, they clearly won. Bitcoin's number has gone up, so they were right in that way. But we did lose in the process the idea of, peer-to-peer digital cash. I guess we lost. And somebody else kind of has to take up that moniker, or some people say, oh, no, Bitcoin still is, peer-to-peer digital cash. I'm just like, okay, wherever you used it last, right? And so it's crazy, that history. But one thing is, like, for me, like, obviously you've seen this whole history. You had this idea way back then, and you've kind of still stuck with it, which is kind of incredible to me because, if it hadn't really been implemented already, or really kind of people had taken it on, a lot of people would have just, dropped it. What makes you kind of still, talk about it? I saw you give the presentation at the Litecoin, summit in Nashville. And what makes you still stick with it and still want to push forward with it?
Well, it's actually, I completely agree with you. In a world where it is just a popularity contest, you would drop it. But it's actually the reason I stick with it is because the facts are with it. No one else has proposed anything that is remotely likely to work at all, let alone as good as this. And considering the simplicity and the risk reward and everything, it's just the best idea. It's like 1,000,000 times better than Lightning. It's better than having unlimited L1 blocks. It is better than covenants. It is just better. All these ideas. People are such phonies is one thing that I have learned. And I don't, but one thing that is disappointing is how many people will take the look at something that someone clearly spent, something like CTV, Jeremy Rubin clearly spent like at least 3 months working on CTV before he produced like a short document, and a short write-up of what it is. And yeah, lots of people are really comfortable just taking a glance at the document, won't even spend 5 minutes thinking about it before they write the tweet that says, oh, this idea sucks or whatever. Sure. Plenty of people are clearly, Peter Todd clearly does this many times where he'll just imagine what he thinks Jeremy Rubin will have come up with, for example. And so he imagines a version of it in his own head without even looking at what the real idea is. And then he just says, oh, Jeremy Rubin is the type of guy who would trick himself into thinking that this would be a good idea, even though it's a bad idea. And so then he'll write the tweet having spent 0 time actually reading the actual idea. So this is like, and many of these people, the more respected they are, the more they are actual phonies. So,
Paul, you've realized the current state of social media and the current state of blockchain technology in a way.
I bet it's probably the same in every industry. I'm not sure, but I bet if you go high enough in like chemistry, there's other people who are like, oh yeah, this is all fake or whatever.
For sure.
Is my guess. I mean, I talked to one guy I knew who did like renovated houses, and that's all he'll talk about. He's like, oh, most people are frauds. Most people do it the wrong way. Most people are lying about everything, et cetera, et cetera. So why not?
I go to the more positive on that, which is, and especially we see it hyper in crypto, which is bag protection. People are doing what they think is necessary to protect their bags, whatever that may be. And everybody's got their own kind of unique bag bias, right? And are automatically kind of, without even thinking about it, working in ways to, in theory, protect that bag bias, even though they may be wrong about things, right? They may think, whatever, big block, small block, oh, big block bag, bad, right? And it's simply a bag bias or protection mechanism that humans do. So I give it a softer view, but rather
It's
than
interesting that you
everybody
say that. I mean, it's certainly completely plausible and definitely does happen. Although when the blockchain forked into BTC and BCH, everyone's an equal bag holder,
Yep.
in theory. Although there's a lot to say about that too, because
I mean,
in practice that
it
was
splits the
badly done.
network, right? It splits the network effect, and
That's true.
weakens that network effect, which is definitely a negative, no doubt. Loses momentum, both sides.
Yeah, I'm all about the network effect. That's right. I mean, you asked me though about like why do I stick with the idea, and I'm just wondering like, are there any ideas that you are particularly excited about and you think are super great?
In blockchain?
Yeah.
Ooh, bro. Yeah, I think.
I mean, because this is kind of my point that. All right, we'll go on. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the core of crypto has always been to me, peer-to-peer digital cash. That is the one that attracted me originally. Secondarily, the thing that really attracted me was smart contracts. I thought that was incredible. That's the thing that really got me into crypto, like as far as like getting a wallet, getting some Ethereum, playing around with it. Like that was the thing that actually got me really excited. But peer-to-peer.
So for peer-to-peer digital cash, like what specifically, like what's the actual, like the game plan, like switch to Bitcoin Cash or campaign for hard fork to larger block size on BTC, what's the specific idea?
So for me, I mean, I'm just talking personally, and this is just my own skewed bag bias craziness. No, I think Bitcoin's a lost cause for peer-to-peer digital cash. I don't think it's going to happen on Bitcoin. I think the incentives are too strong in the other way. And actually what we've seen is, those kind of currencies or cryptos that have worked for digital cash, they don't have number go up technology in them. The number go up technology of Bitcoin is so strong that it doesn't matter the peer-to-peer digital cash. So my thought process is, and you see this with Litecoiners, and I think it's a mistake from the Litecoiner perspective. They keep talking about, how the price of Litecoin's going to go up when we have mainstream adoption, or we have Litecoin available, at every merchant on earth, right? That's the wrong strategy from my narrative perspective, which it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be number go up. It should just be, look, this is a great play. This is where you can buy and sell and use peer-to-peer digital cash. It's not about number go up. Unfortunately, all of crypto has been kind of corrupted by this idea of number go up. And in my mind, the way I frame it for myself, and when I talk to Bitcoiners, I ask this question, which is, hey, if Bitcoin was stuck at $10,000 per Bitcoin forever, would you exchange that for peer-to-peer digital cash that takes money out of the hands of government and puts it in an individual's hands? And to a man, when I talk to hardcore Bitcoiners, like the Bitcoin maxis, they immediately go into, well, that's not the way that it works. It's going to, of course, go to $1 trillion of Bitcoin. And I'm like, but that's not the question. The question is a thought process of, would you give up your vast wealth to have a peer-to-peer digital cash system that impacts the entire world and takes money out of the hands of government? And the maxis, it turns out, they don't care about that. They want to be.
Yeah, but I'm just curious about.
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying. I'm just curious about. You think the way to go is to encourage people to use Litecoin in everyday transactions.
I'm not particularly concerned about Litecoin being the coin. My brain actually goes to something much more down the line that's maybe hard to see right now, which is we have hundreds, dozens, thousands, maybe an infinite number of coins, and people use what they want to use. I look at
yes,
it as,
of course.
I look at
of course.
it as,
but the only reason I ask is because this is like the Drivechain vision is very similar to that. It says we have maybe 100,000 different pieces of software, or more likely probably like maybe 30 or so. But the point is you have the option to introduce a new piece of software at any time.
Yep.
And however, it's all just one currency unit. those all share. So this has an advantage over, because this is what was sometimes called altcoin pluralism. Like Eric Voorhees was big into this back in the day, that competition is good. Friedrich Hayek, currency competition, the currencies will compete. And that I was very critical of him at the time, but the evidence so far has crushed my point of view compared to his so far, because it's true that I always thought like, oh, sidechains will be this thing, and we won't really need altcoins. But the dark reality is that the sidechain technology has been slow to come into existence and be adopted and even be understood or accepted by anyone. And meanwhile, it's so easy to launch an altcoin. This, of course, made many, many scams, but it also meant that, you could just launch, whatever, Monero or something. And so it would actually be there. So this is a lot of points scored by the altcoin pluralists, such as Eric and yourself, presumably, because it just means you have all this stuff. Otherwise, there would have been nothing if we had all just said, oh, we're just going to wait. We're just going to carefully wait for sidechains on Bitcoin, which is what I thought everyone would do and should do. That's in 2014. That was what I thought, but I was completely wrong about that, I think. But it would have been better if more people were interested in. I think it would have been better for everyone, large blockers and small blockers, if instead of splitting, they had cooperated on a win-win thing, but they both didn't want to do that. That's my little story. But that's why I asked you about what do you like? Because people say, why do you stick with the drive chain idea, which is what you had asked me. And I was like, well, actually, the drive chain still sounds much better to me than altcoin pluralism, because with altcoin pluralism, you have all these people releasing new coins. Many of the coins will be scams, and many of the projects, they'll have an enormous amount of inconvenience due to the exchange rate fluctuations, none of which you have with, it's like you go to an ATM and you take $20 out of your checking account and you get a $20 bill. Or you go to the laundromat or whatever and you put in a $5 bill. You get $5 worth of quarters out of the change machine. You know what I mean? So the altcoin pluralism is you go to the ATM and you withdraw $20 from your checking account and you get maybe some different amount of money, you get $17.83, or you get $25 or something. Sure. That's the problem with altcoin pluralism.
Well, I think this is where the idea of meme coins actually comes in, which is it's ridiculous now, and I admit it's ridiculous. But what people can actually judge with new, say, a meme coin is this in some way fair? Was this in some way fairly launched? Is there a big team allocation, right? Was it pre-mined by a bunch of people, right? And so in a way, the end user has a much better idea of, am I going to get behind this coin because it's fair or not fair or whatever? And we've gone through literally thousands of these now. And, our small group of crypto enthusiasts have gotten better at sniffing it out, not perfect, but better. And I actually feel like as a community and as a globe later, we're moving into this idea of a multi-currency future where currencies have to compete, and that competition, by competition's nature, will bring out winners and losers, what people actually want. And maybe they want a dog token, maybe they want Doge, or maybe they want hard money of Bitcoin, or maybe they don't want hard money of Bitcoin because they don't like that Satoshi has 1 million coins, right? It's people get to
or both or neither, right? Or some mix.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that you brought that up, the competition point. That is definitely a regret of mine. If I look back, I would have said, if I could tell my younger self something, I would just say competition, put all your chips on competition, because competition is it's kind of like error correction across people and across time. So it's if everyone's doing the wrong thing, the competitor will do the right thing and they will be outcompeted. You get evolution that way. So in the context of Bitcoin, the fact that Bitcoin had this big lead and it had network effects, that insulated it from some competition, which had some unhealthy effects of this complacency and overconfidence and just saying Bitcoin is already going to win. And the idea, even though the altcoins were terrible, and I really never owned an altcoin and never believed in any altcoins, but it would be a much worse place if there were not, these altcoins are actually good because they do, they let people have, exactly as you said, they let people, have their whoever they like, whatever your slice of pie is, or whatever the phrase. So this attribute that we need to have the ability to launch a new coin to mop up any errors, at least learn things about what the technology can do, is very, very important. And I think that's a regret that I think, in particular, my view is that the competition will ultimately produce a situation where only one coin will survive, which is kind of a paradox. Mm-hmm. But it's because the competitive environment will make it so that we will have an optimal coin at some point. There'll be like an optimal tech stack, like how people today, they just get download to start like a web server. They know that they can go on whatever it is, Linode or whatever, and get Ubuntu, this Apache server or whatever. There's just like the LAMP stack or whatever. It'll be like the stack. And it will reach a point eventually, probably in 3 to 5 years, where anyone on their laptop can just launch something that not only does it have a small block size and easy to run nodes, but it scales to the entire planet Earth, and it has unbreakable privacy, and it has the ability to issue assets, stocks and bonds, whatever. So without competition, we would never reach that point. And because of competition, when we do reach that point, the network effects will be all that remain, and one coin will obliterate the others. This is a bizarre
question there. Why do you think that, though? I mean, I understand coming from a kind of U.S. dollar.
Because it will be a finished project.
Yeah, why?
That's why the competition will reach the perfected state. I mean, it won't be literally perfect, of course, but right. It's like what I was trying to say about how people like the Apache server. You know what I mean? Like, okay, they're like, am I trying? I'm kind of glossing over a lot of the details, but I'm trying to say, like, it's like, like the QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah.
It's not like the QWERTY keyboard you get on Amazon for like $12. Yeah. It's not like it's literally perfect. You know what I mean? It's not like the platonic ideal.
It's literally the exact opposite. It's literally the worst keyboard you could possibly use. That's a fact. I've gone down that rabbit hole. Trust me, I've gone down that rabbit hole. It's literally whenever somebody says, "Oh," I'm
familiar with this story because it's people were typing too quickly and it was jamming the keys, so they put commonly used keys further away, which meant the home row on the keyboard as a semicolon and all this nonsense that shouldn't be there. The vowels are all weirdly separated. So but the point is, there's no need to like innovate. People have, of course. There's the keyboard that is split into two things for your hand, and there's the touch screen keyboard was new. So it won't literally be the end of innovation, but there will reach a point where the network effects, because you see that you agree with me that the QWERTY keyboard has enormous network effects.
1,000,000%. It's one of those,
your kids, if you're raising kids, they have to learn the QWERTY keyboard.
It's literally, it's my perfect. I use it all the time because it's one of these where when somebody like, oh, I don't know, whatever, Cardano's going to win because Cardano's got the best tech. And I'm like, bro, best tech.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Look down right now, bro, because you're literally using the worst tech. Like that tech is 150-year-old tech that is bad. There are ones that are literally twice as efficient, and you don't use it because you don't even know that it exists, right? And so, yeah, it's one of these perfect examples of network effects winning, right? It's literally the perfect example. Super.
So I'm saying network effects are very strong, and with money they're very strong because if you are on the wrong monetary thing, you have your wealth stored in something that may go to zero, so it has a risk. So you divest slightly, and then the risk becomes self-fulfilling prophecy, geometrically increasing likelihood that the coin will fail.
Yeah.
So that will happen to like the smallest. There'll be iterated deletion of the smallest coin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you start. Eventually, we'll have perfect tech stack. We'll have all these coins, and among all the perfect ones, or among all the, let's call them viable ones, these are the ones that have the right scalability and privacy and other features. They are not imperiled by the fact that they lack a feature that some people want. So if there's some coins that are, so Bitcoin is in this position now where there are some coins that decline to improve, or they decline to, they're not motivated to please the end user.
Sure.
Which is a bizarre state of affairs. And so these people, I mean, these coins are kind of taking themselves out of the running, but there will be many, many coins that, you know, that want to win. They're going for the number one spot. They're very, very, very motivated to hit the number one spot. And
well, I'd say Bitcoin actually hits the number one goal of the end user, which is number go up. Number go up is the thing it does that is more important than fast transactions or being big blogs, any of that stuff.
Well, now we're going on so many different threads but don't let me forget any threads. But we can talk about this if you like, because the number go up thing, and this is a multi-stage thing, like the rockets, you know, reaching the moon. You know, that was like stage one, and then it has to separate, like the Starship, Elon Musk's Starship, like it goes up, and then the booster separates. So there's stages, and to number go up, early on, you can increase the price by just convincing other people that the price will go up. So it can be purely speculative at first. Even though it can be a lot of knowledgeable people. Like in the early days, Bitcoin was everyone involved was very knowledgeable of the project. You know, the first user was Satoshi, the inventor. The second user was Hal Finney, another coin inventor, coinsmith guy who was a tech visionary and genius. So as time goes on, many things change, though. There's more and more lay people who are users who are buying the coin, and you are buying it. You know, there's the speculative route and the usage route. So then you had people like, you know, the gentleman who bought the Pizza Hut pizza in northern Florida. So over time, the number is going up mostly for a speculative reason. However, in the second to last stage, so I'm saying there's stage. You're going to the moon. You're almost at the moon. You've separated a few times. You're orbiting the moon or whatever, you know. And you're at the very last stage. The last stage cannot be one of convincing other people that the price will go up. The only option for the final stage, the last, you know, link of the chain, the final chapter of the book must be that people adopted it to use it every day. Mm-hmm. And those people cannot get it. It's because you basically have like an implied likelihood. You take the price, the hyper Bitcoinization price, you know, the price of just taking over. You divide the current price into that, and that is basically the likelihood that it will happen. So by the time it actually happens, the number isn't going up anymore, you know, by definition. But when it's 1,000,000 to 1, and it goes from being 100 million to 1 to 1,000,000 to 1, it can go up 100x.
Yeah.
So early on, your best bet is, and think of the relative costs and benefits of these things also, which are that it's very easy to just shill the coin and say this is going to be great, compared to build out the user experience and get real adoption from real users. Then you have to deal with all these messy details that are necessarily like, they're like part of the grimy physical world. They have all these, what you might call like these real world details you have to work out. Whereas the other thing is just from far away, you just say, oh, it's going to be great. Everything's going to be perfect. No details, you know.
I mean, we're further away. We're many times further away, right, from use cases, you know, our general use of Bitcoin we were many times more used in 2015 than we are today, right? I mean, it's like we've gone completely backwards. So I don't know anybody.
Well, yes, I would. The cultural focus, I agree with you. But what I was trying, we have a hand up also. But I was just trying to say, you're saying it works for number go up, but I'm saying actually number go up is either a Ponzi scheme or it ends up converting into
Interesting. Yeah, it's possible.
actual usage.
Yeah,
so and if it's a Ponzi scheme, it will only go up for a little while, and then the more up it goes, the more at risk you are of being one of the people who, should have sold, cashed out. So actually, that whole situation is unstable. So it does work for now, but it will have the people who are buying it for number go up. They either believe it is a Ponzi scheme or they believe that it will become something that is used by everyone. So
yeah, that makes sense.
I don't see a third option for that.
One question.
We have someone. Yeah, we have a cartoon. Before
we get to the hand, one question. One final question for me is right now. So you were obviously speaking at the Litecoin conference. Is your goal now? Is your focus with Drivechains? Hey, let's try an experiment on a different chain to get some adoption, and then maybe we try and bring it to Bitcoin. Or what's your current focus on kind of bringing Drivechains forward?
Sure. The current technology we have shipped is a fork of the old Bitcoin version 16.99. And 16.99 is very old, and we have a Signet testnet. With that, you can all download now at layer2labs.com/download and just check it out. There's no activation client, so even if people wanted to activate Drivechain, there is no way for anyone to do so. And so there's a lot to talk about with that, but there is a new way of putting out an activation client that I call CUSIF, C-U-S-F. You can go to BIP300CUSF.com and read about it. This is much, much better way of activating soft fork via its own standalone piece of software, and it does not involve a pull request to Bitcoin Core or any modification to the Bitcoin Core software at all. And another interesting thing about it is it should be very, very easy for something like Litecoin or another coin, whatever, any other altcoin, meme coin, etc. It should be very easy for them to activate it as well. And just because it's its own software project, it's also better with maintenance, collaborating to fix bugs, etc. So the current focus is to try to switch from the old testnet, which, we created a while ago and we just reset periodically, but it's based on old Bitcoin Core software from I don't even know, 2018 or something. And to switch it to this new thing is CUSF, and that will always work with the latest version of Bitcoin Core without modifying Bitcoin Core at all. So in that way, that will be the first time that BIP300 could be activated, because with no activation client, there's nothing for people to use, even though the idea is there. The sidechains are there. We have built many sidechains already. So my focus is on that, and that should make it easier for any coin, including Bitcoin and Litecoin, to activate BIP300 for real and start using Drivechains. We have produced a lot of these L2 Drivechains already. You can go to releases.drivechain.info or just get them from layer2labs.com/download, because the launcher has them there. So those already exist. The focus now is on this CUSF software. So that is what I'm focused on now.
So what would be your ideal situation or ideal way forward? Would it be to get Litecoin to accept this and Litecoin to give it, the go ahead? What would, obviously, I'm speaking out of turn because I don't know about Bitcoin.
Well, that's very interesting.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Bitcoin's not moving forward with this, right? Bitcoin Core is probably not.
Well, I think another advantage of CUSF is that the miners can activate it unilaterally, and Bitcoin Core cannot do anything to prevent a soft fork from activating since it's in its own project. So that is another thing that may change the game completely, because it will be like in the paper, I have a phrase like the ordinalization of soft forks. So that might be something that happens, although I don't know.
Bro,
I do
you
have the
better get a
support
good
of some
narrative
miners.
going, bro, because I mean, you got to convince the miners. I've been, I don't know if you know, but I've been working with Bell's Coin and stuff, and to convince miners to do stuff like requires tremendous amount of. First, you got to have a really strong narrative. They have to know what you're doing and why, and they have to have a big financial incentive to do it, right? So we got them to kind of accept this V3, which allowed merge mining. The reason they did that was because there's a huge financial incentive on the other side, right? So what would be their incentive?
Yeah, well, Drivechain is merge mining also. So that's I do think that in the future, 99% plus of all mining revenues will come from merge mining, and in particular, merge mined Drivechain. So I do think there is something in it for the miners. I agree with you, though, that the miners are not technical. This is to their own detriment, because I think they make less money than they would make if they were more actively involved. I mean, one thing to point out is that, scaling up the project means more transaction fees. And so if you are in a situation where you can get a situation where you can collect all the transaction fees in the entire planet Earth, that is worth like hundreds of billions of dollars per year, because there's like 8 billion people on planet Earth, and we make like a few transactions a day, 365 days a year. And so that's an enormous amount of money. So I think that it's weird that miners don't, but of course, I think the miners are many of the Bitcoin miners are not technical at all, and they're just actually business people who run the mining pools, and they don't. They're like, they don't know anything about software
Absolutely
at all, let alone Bitcoin development. So that's one thing. But yeah, I do think, I don't know, the ideal situation for me would probably be like we retool the demo so that there is the CUSF QSIF activation client. And so then finally something exists where this would be the first day that action could possibly be taken. We redo the demo like that we have with that, and the demo goes viral, among miners or something. They say, why don't we do this? In Bitcoin, we could have Zcash privacy. We could be collecting all these transaction fees. We have, all this stuff. There's all these benefits for us. So why don't we just try it? And then they're supposed to just do it, and then it attracts users, and everyone looks back on, no one pays. The ideal thing would be if, I suppose, no one pays any attention to the existing technical community, the existing developer community anymore, having basically misled everyone with Lightning and even covenants and all this other stuff that they are doing now, which is like, in my view, a kind of make work program.
Bro, that's pretty scathing. Guys, we have on stage Inu or Smokes. If you guys have a question, just raise your hand or just open your mic and.
I don't really have questions. I'm just here to support. I love all the spaces that you host, and I think Bitcoin. Usually, Bitcoin holders, they tend to stay within their community and stuff like that, not look at other communities. But I've realized that we have a lot of Bitcoin people within the Bells community, and it's almost like we're their little brother, and they see potential in us because we do a lot of the things that they're doing, like Opcat and all that stuff. So. I'm just excited. We can work together.
Appreciate that. Inu, what's up, man?
Yeah. I came in a bit not since the beginning, but I was just wondering why do you think Lightning is shit? And yeah, I mean, and also do you think Lightning can ever actually be
Not the
used to
shit.
buy coffee. And I mean, yeah, not used
well,
to buy
okay,
coffee,
this is
for
of
groceries.
course, it's a completely fair question, obviously. And this is definitely one of those cases where the word lightning, I think, probably means something different to me than maybe it means something slightly different, for everyone. It's like free speech or something, where some people just always start talking about the First Amendment, but then other people will say this is a more general thing that applies, that whatever John Stuart Mill invented long before there was in America. So lightning, I have written a piece called The LN Black Pill. And if you search my blog, which is truthcoin.info, just search on Google, Truthcoin LN Black Pill. And it's basically just a collection of quotes from people who work on the Lightning Network. And I just think like anyone who reads this list will start to see like how it's just, there's just an enormous difference between the way, what the layperson thinks, what someone would think if they went to like a Bitcoin conference or even a technical Bitcoin conference that is of high repute, like a TabConf or something. You would go and you would see like there's a whole Lightning Day. If you go to like, I don't remember which website, one of Michael Saylor's websites, there's like a whole Bitcoin section at the top, and then there's like a tab. There's like a whole Lightning section. It's like these are held up as though these are two comparable things. Bitcoin first the Bitcoin era, and then the Lightning era. And if you just read the quotes, the quotes are terrible. I've also written 2 years earlier. I had written a piece called "Lightning Limitations." Lightning limitations is where I just do some basic math, and I just explain how this idea is the idea as explained in the the Lightning white paper, and that as implemented in the non-custodial Lightning wallets basically cannot work. Now, when the people who are Lightning engineers, when they use the word Lightning, they're thinking like, okay, sure, it doesn't work now, but we're going to have PTLCs soon, or we're going to have any priv out or CTV, and then we'll retool this stuff so that they'll think like Arc is Lightning or whatever. But if you talk to like Barack, the creator of Arc, he'll be like, right in moments into the masterclass whiteboard explainer video, he's like, so yeah, I think we all agree Lightning doesn't work, and I tried to fix the problems with Lightning, and then I just came up with a completely different thing. It's called Arc. Use the CTV. So to me, it's just become this horrible thing. Like it's become like a kind of like Theranos to me, where you have all these smart people working there, and it raises more and more money. And on the outside, it looks better and better and better, but on the inside, it doesn't work. And so people are afraid. They're just not willing to talk about it. It's one of the biggest sacred cows of them all.
Yeah.
And you can't say anything bad about it. But I'll give you a list. You asked why do I think it cannot work. Also, if you go to my Twitter highlights, at some point I make a list of 10 things. One would be enough, but I have 10, and there are quite a few. I mean, one of the things on the list is that in order to join the Lightning Network, you need a channel on L1, so it does nothing to help onboarding at all. So there's no way to onboarding 8 billion people in the first place. So that alone makes it so that it doesn't work. Another reason why it cannot work is it does not work when the fees are high. It's the HTLCs don't work, which is the whole thing, keeping it secure. So either you live in a low fee world forever, in which case Lightning is basically not needed because the usage is low, since it's just a demand curve.
Yep. It's
just a point on the demand curve, and or the fees are high, in which case it doesn't work. Another thing is that it's like the Lightning does not pass the fees down to the L1 Bitcoin miners, but the miners can steal from the Lightning Network at any time by censoring the justice transactions. So the long run strategic equilibrium is like the miners will have no loyalty to they either vertically integrate, and the miners will become these LSPs. You have like Foundry LSP, where Foundry will give you your Lightning channel, or there'll be some conflict between something that does pay the fees to Foundry, such as merge mining, such as Drivechain, and the conflict between that and, the LSPs. And then at that point, it will be a battle between the LSP and Foundry, except that the LSP will have no bullets and cannot possibly win. They will be destroyed. And if Foundry vertically integrates with the LSP, now all of the stuff about the HTLCs and the channels, all of that is completely superfluous and does nothing. So those are just 3 of the 10. You can look up the list if you want, but any one of these would kill the project. And it's like, don't know what to say. It just doesn't work.
Very good comprehensive list. I'll have a read sometime.
Would you consider it? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I also want to ask, because I have a mate, and he we were looking at Lightning channels and whatnot together, and he's deeper in Lightning than me, but he was telling me that one of the main reasons why Lightning doesn't really work is that people just fucking set fees. So if everyone just actually hosts their own Lightning nodes for free without taking fees, then that's the first thing. And then the second thing is if people who didn't want to host nodes would just use what did they call it? It's a little
Lighthouses
mini
or
bank. Not lighthouses, but it's these stuff like Moon and stuff like that, where it's it's not there. You don't actually have to open a channel. You just actually it's just a mini bank that they run.
Yeah.
Then there's a higher level of centralization to it, but
yeah, you're basically
course.
giving your money to somebody else. I mean, right? That's
The way that a lot of these things work is either the other person has all of your money, in which case this is fine, but it's not Lightning. You understand? This is it may work, but there's not a single idea, from Lightning tech stack in a custodial wallet. It's not even Bitcoin, because it's just a thing where it just says, they may receive the Bitcoin somehow, and then they'll give you you contact their server and they'll say you have 10 coins, you have 10 credits or whatever. But the custodial stuff is, and it's the way a lot of this stuff also works, the submarine swaps and whatever. You make a Lightning payment, it requires an on-chain payment in order to work. But everyone just people are very quiet as to the extent of, what you might call, very quiet on what you might call the fraudulent nature of much of this technology, which is why I compare it to Theranos, where it's people just look the other way. The money's coming in, whatever. Lightning Labs raised $70 million, which is great, good for them, whatever. I don't, I'm not saying that is wrong, and I do think it's good to have people working on the Lightning Network and trying it. We should try everything. I'm very pluralist. But people have been trained, we're really no different than, I worked at one point for someone who was a Federal Reserve chairman. I have background in academic economics. A lot of the stuff that people criticize, they criticize traditional academic economics for, or they criticize the Fed for. The Fed would do a lot of these things where, everyone knows, Milton Friedman wrote many times about how the Fed is biased towards doing complicated stuff about methodology. They care a lot about some complicated statistical regression or something. And they're not really interested in big things that they could easily do. Should they set up futures markets on what nominal GDP will be? And will they hit or futures markets and will they hit their inflation target? That's a very simple idea that you can explain in one day. But because it would put the 12 people, the 12 board members kind of out of a job, or it would render their decision making kind of pointless. It's like saying we've invented this thing that does, you go into the CEO and you say, we've invented the optimal AI CEO. It does everything the CEO should do except perfect. And the CEO is oh my God, this person has stumbled upon something that will ruin us all or whatever, so they won't do any simple thing that will work. Yeah. But then there's a cultural bias away from looking at things that everyone knows are true. And that's why I assembled these quotes in the LN Black Belt. It's people know that the idea is not viable, but they just kind of pretend that it is.
Yeah,
And they
'cause
just
have
keep lying about
again,
it.
we
It's
get back
just
to
like,
the,
whatever.
we get back to this bag bias or aligned
The
incentives.
ego is the heaviest bag of them all.
Oh, you got Bing. What's up, Smokes?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like almost like a yin and yang slash double-edged sword, because like the way I think of it, right, is I used to like transact in Bitcoin, but so if you do have very high fees, it's like kind of like people won't spend it. That could be a good or a bad thing because I guess people will hold that as a store of value, but then you also won't have transactions, and it feels like Bitcoin, at least the community is split in half between half wanting it to be a store of value and half wanting it to be like regular money and transactional. But then when you do move over to like, systems that make it possible by lowering fees, such as like Lightning, right? Then it becomes centralized, which is the opposite of what you want crypto to be, right? So you're like centralizing decentralized currency, but you're making it more accessible, but you do have centralized issues. Like I was looking into it, and like I see it's easy for you to like lose like your channel and get like robbed by going offline or something, like your channel going offline. It's like it says fraudulent channel closure, which just sounds like scary. And yeah, I think the only way for people to use Lightning would be to like have a centralized government or company basically open the channels and deal with that for people like they do in El Salvador. Like I know their Chivo wallet I think is what it's called. They use Lightning, but it's like it's done through the
Oh, the
government.
Chiva wallet is, an excellent example of. So I'm not going to second guess, Mr. President Bukele, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name
You don't want
exactly.
to question him.
Well, in particular, he is in a very difficult position of having to deal with a lot of really, really poor people who are not very well educated, and there's a lot of crime, and it's a very small nation where there's a lot of capital flight, there's a lot of brain drain, and he seems to be very popular, and I wish him all the best, etc. That being said, now the other shoe has to fall, right? So the Chiva wallet is basically a CBDC where it is linked to their version of the Social Security number. It is totally custodial, where the government runs the whole thing. Now that being the case, you can, from the Chiva wallet, you could make a payment to someone using the sovereign Bitcoin wallet. And my understanding is that it will work, although I have not tested it, although I plan to go to El Salvador later, sometime this year, to check it out for myself with some friends. We are planning this trip, so I'm excited for that. But the Chiva wallet is not, it is not really a when people use that wallet, they are not using the Bitcoin network.
For sure.
But it is interoperable with the Bitcoin network.
I think it's the thing that we talked about, Adam and I, the other day about JP Morgan and these big banks. I think it's like take one number from here and put it on the other account. You're not actually doing any actual transactions within the system, which is, like I said, you're centralizing a decentralized platform, which is scary.
I mean, literally, when we think about it in Bitcoin today, with runes or whatever, the idea of meme coins on top of Bitcoin, and the highest kind of achievement is getting their meme coin on a centralized exchange, right? And how silly that is, but that's the reality of it today, right?
Yeah, that's what we want with Bells, which is like kind of ironic.
It's completely ironic, and it goes against kind of the crypto ethos, but that's where crypto is right now. Go ahead, Inu.
So I somehow assume that with this perspective, you probably don't like Michael Saylor, but but these wallets and like the centralized exchanges and like the fully custodial, quote unquote, non-blockchain type of transaction gateways, he kind of describes it as like a layer 3, where like layer 2 might be like more centralized / hybrid on-chain ish type of stuff, and then layer 3 is just like highly performant databases where you're just kind of not really interacting with the blockchain, but you're sort of using the blockchain's currency and having someone else like handle it for you. Like, do you view this as like a viable type of future scaling, or is this just kind of against crypto?
Oh, absolutely. This will have this will happen, and it will be not only like necessary but inevitable and sort of imperative also. So that will happen, but that it will only it only matters if layers like 1 and 2 work. So we may not even get to that point with Bitcoin, like if it's not popular enough. So everyone does this to some extent. Even like you go to the bar and you have like a bar tab. That is like that's a layer above the credit card layer. He doesn't charge the credit card until the end. So everyone agrees scaling in layers is very good.
It's a credit card channel.
Yeah, sure. Bartender channel. Now, so Michael Saylor, he's just smart enough to count from layer 1 to layer 2 to layer 3. He can come up with a great meme or a great buzzword, which is great. Good for him. That's what he, wants to do with his Bitcoin career or something. But there's 2 areas at least where, he's mistaken about a lot of things, in my opinion. One is he does not care enough about privacy. And number 2, he does not care enough about the long run, like mining transaction fees. So he has this story about how Bitcoin is like owning a part of Manhattan or something. And you only own it if no one can take it away from you. But without the privacy, it becomes much easier for people to take it. You have like a Kamala Harris proposing the unrealized capital gains. And now they're taking your, they're taking your big, then once they inflate. So that, capital gains tax plus inflation equals, plus the lack of privacy. Those are the 3 ingredients that equals your wealth being confiscated. So it's not, you're not owning the real estate at all unless there's privacy. I think one thing that Michael Saylor should reflect on is that there was another city, which was the wealthiest city in the entire world in 1960, I believe. And do you know what that city was?
Caracas, Venezuela? I don't know.
No, it was in the United States.
Oh, in the U.S. now, tell me. Oh.
It was Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, yeah.
The wealthiest city in the world. And, Cleveland and all the rest. There was Millionaires Row. Rockefeller, I think, is buried in Cleveland or something. So in this time period of like the 50s and 60s, the Rust Belt, that was the wealthiest. Buffalo, New York, these were the wealthiest cities in the entire world. Niagara Falls, because of the generator, that was the first place to have like electrified lights. So these are cities, now Detroit is, among one of the poorest cities in the entire world. So if Michael Saylor, it can start as Detroit. It can start as owning part of Detroit, and then it can end as owning part of Detroit. And so the privacy is important, and also, I think he's just one of these people that has not thought through the whole security budget thing, and they just think the security budget people. What they never do is they never write down what they exactly with numbers exactly what they expect will happen. Like there will be this number of transactions on L1. There will be this number of transactions, and they will pay this fee, and this will be, and they multiply it out. They always have like a complicated thing going on in their head where they just think, oh, the fees, the miners will make a ton of money because every transaction fee will be $5,000, and everyone will be happy to pay $5,000 per transaction fee because when you open a channel, Lightning channel, you can make 1 billion transactions, and like when it's very unclear even what they mean. Because it's so confused because they haven't figured it out for themselves. They haven't gone into like a quiet room with a pen and a piece of paper and figured it out.
I mean, I obviously understand what you're saying, but do you think that's the type of thing that just solves itself when it becomes like a real problem? Like you need a kind of a crisis to solve. Like a lot of people believe that blockchain issues really get solved when there's crisis, right? So when you have a crisis, that's when
definitely when there's any issue affecting a lot of people that are trapped in a bureaucracy, the inability to solve the problem will create a crisis, and that will stimulate the creative search for solutions. I think that will discredit. This is related to a friend of mine, Alex K, creator of Google Autocomplete or whatever. He has the patent for it or something. But he believes he has this extremely complex, well, it's not that complicated, but he has kind of a funny theory about there will be the fee apocalypse where the L1 fees will rise very high, and this will interfere with, the non-custodial regular Lightning will stop working also because it doesn't work when the fees are high or even when they're just volatile. And so the regular transactions won't work, Lightning won't work, nothing will work. And this will discredit the high priests of BTC, and then and the users will no longer have any kind of loyalty to them. And then as a result, there will be like a kind of a turnover to more. All the old mistaken ideas will be discredited. So that's kind of like what you're saying. Sure. I think he may be right about that. There's a book, Hirschman. This guy wrote this book, famous. This guy was a great sociologist, and he did write a book that a lot of people found to be very good, called "Exit, Voice, and Loyalty," which is about the relative costs of different ways of solving an organization's problems. So, if you own shares of a corporation, it's very easy for you to just sell the shares and just buy. If you own Tesla and you say, I don't really like what Tesla's doing anymore. I think they've taken us this far, but it's not going anywhere from here. I think that such and such, I don't know, Ford, I'm just making this up. Ford, everyone's sleeping.
Oh, did we just lose him?
I think so.
Yeah, we might.
I think we just lost.
I can babble on a little bit. I actually have a point. I agree with the thing that you guys were talking about, where like if major issues happen, like it will take us down like a black hole almost. But then a solution will come up. I was going to say that when
this does happen often for me.
Yeah, you're back. You're back, Paul.
Okay, did anyone hear what I said?
Yeah, we heard you. And Smokes was just saying, like, yeah, he was agreeing this kind of.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think if we do have the unrealized gains issue, which I think is just all political talk, because there's big donors that will never let it happen on either side. But if that does happen, I feel like it will create more good for cryptocurrency than bad, because I feel like most people will remove their stuff from exchanges and say, tax this dick, we're not paying that, and they'll go off the grid.
Yeah, I think this is unrelated to what I was saying before, but I think that the unrealized, in many ways, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies would benefit enormously from disastrous economic policy.
Sure.
If they said we're going to print $10 trillion every year, and if they said we're going to tax everyone at 99%, everything in the regular world would crash. Berkshire Hathaway would crash, but Bitcoin would probably rally and go up as a result of that. So, because everyone would realize, the Bitcoiners they're not going to be paying the unrealized capital gains tax or any other taxes for that matter. So that I think that's a real possibility.
They can arrest us. Fuck it.
Let's jump to Dogfather real quick and wrap it up here, because I know Paul, I appreciate you staying on longer for us here. Dogfather, go ahead.
Hey, GM. Yeah, really great discussion. I mean, Paul, like your takes, very deep. Even though I think this takes way longer than 3 to 5 years. We always kind of like envision that everything is clear, we understand everything, and the rest will also follow suit. But I mean, it just takes generations maybe until we have these types of, new equilibriums. I just felt a bit triggered because Adam was mentioning, runes and centralized exchanges. I mean, you can make the same jokes about ETFs and Bitcoin, right? Now everyone is celebrating, wow, ETFs and BlackRock, these are now our friends. No, typically they are not. It's the same centralization issue. But, it was good for the price, so people were celebrating that. And I think I have a more balanced view. I think if you want to onboard people to crypto in a hardcore way, like you do self-custody with your cold storage, then we keep the same number of people, like, 10,000, 100,000. But the normies will never do that. I mean, they don't have the time, they don't have the expertise, they don't have, They just don't like bother with these things. It's the same like in the stock market. People don't actively trade stocks in big numbers. They just give away a mandate to the BlackRocks and the like. And it is the same in crypto, right? So you hand over your money to an ETF. If you want to have fun with meme coins, either you go on Solana, and if you want to be on Bitcoin, it's quite a hassle right now. But if it's on OKX and Binance, and you can play around with some pocket money, that's where the millions are, right? If you really want to onboard many people to crypto, it needs to be super easy. And for these amounts of money, they don't care whether it's on their hardware wallet or whether they lose $100 or so. It's just like gambling in Vegas. I mean, it's not like what we do with our BTC stack, right? So we need to be like a bit more humble that, let's say, regular people don't have the same high standards in terms of decentralization and, taking power away from the state and having like competition on the currency level and stuff like that. This is like a 1% of the population max discussion. If you want to have a broader impact on society, we need to be a bit more like, okay, maybe if people trade on the regulated exchange, which is kind of like not as shady, like being on the Bahamas, and trading with the customer's money. For example, we have some exchanges here in Europe which are like highly regulated and, that are pretty safe. I would say that for most people, those exchanges are fine if they don't invest too much money, right? So that's just my 2 cents here.
I definitely agree that, not everyone wants to hear about monetary policy or whatever, but I think we go back to the QWERTY keyboard where, most people don't want to hear about monetary policy, but most people do use whatever money is nearby. So if you live in Japan, you use yen. And if you live in Europe, you use the euro mostly, unless you're in Switzerland or whatever. But the point is, the money has these strong network effects. So actually, it's not necessary for everyone to understand everything that's going on for it to potentially flip everyone. Certainly that's not going to happen overnight, though. Yeah, Rome was built in a day, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Great point, Dogfather there. I'm definitely of that same kind of mindset and belief that we're at the early stages here. Most people are just simply not in a position, not prepared to even, consider holding crypto in any meaningful way. I do think we're at the kind of beginning stages in that way. And in that way too, like Paul, with what you're doing, it may even feel like, oh my God, we missed the boat, or, all these guys did stuff before, and, Drivechains kind of missed that opportunity. And in that sort of longer view, I think maybe you haven't missed anything. Maybe it's still early days, and you still have a real opportunity to kind of bring your vision to life. And maybe it will be on Bitcoin. Maybe it needs to happen first on Litecoin or Bell's Coin or some other coin that kind of has a more open community to it. But
I do think like BIP 39 is a much simpler idea, of course, but that is an idea that is still not adopted on Bitcoin Core. The Bitcoin Core wallet does not have BIP 39, even though like BDK and almost every other, even stuff like Electrum, which doesn't like BIP 39, still supports it. But so I actually do think it's possible that BIP 300 could be just on many altcoins, like more than 200 or 300 altcoins before it's on BTC.
Yeah.
Although it is a very curious BIP where it is sort of the purpose of the BIP is to make the other coins obsolete. So, but that's not necessarily that you can still have 300 altcoins do it just, for fun.
Yeah.
It depends completely on if the transaction fee volume would support a healthy drive chain. So, yeah.
Well, Paul, I really appreciate your time today. Learned a lot. I've followed you and got a lot of info. I watched a few of the videos you've put out there, and I appreciated seeing you in Nashville. And we'll definitely follow along. Everybody follow Paul, give him a follow. Really excited to see what can happen with Drivechains coming up in the future. I've pinned our space tomorrow. We're going to be talking some privacy tomorrow. Everybody go set your reminder. 11:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. We're going to talk and dive into privacy with a privacy OG expert. So really excited about that. And until then, guys, we will see you next time. Take care, guys.
Take it easy. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the space is ended yet. Paul, if